Common chisels for beginners. What are they? What are the different types? And why you might want to get one over another. I'm going to explain that here. So our most common would be bevel edge chisels. That'd be these ones here, where the edge of the blade actually has a bevel on it. This slant here is called a bevel. You get that up close on that one, or to do it there. So the slant that you can see here is a bevel. Not all chisels have a bevel on them. That bevel is there for a reason. So if you've got a block of timber and it looks like that, and you're going to be cutting out a wedge out of it, there's our grain. This angle in here is less than 90 degrees, and it's called an acute angle. And that's what bevel edge does. It gets in to acute angles very well. If you're studying this, this is something you'd want to know. The other thing is bevel edge chisels. Let's go over the parts. So we have the blade. These are sharp. Right, we have the blade, and this bit's called the handle. What we also have is it's got a neck, and the neck sits on top of here, the shoulder. This is a bevel edge. I should just draw a line to that. And this is the busy end. So that is the main point, the sharp end. And the sharp end actually has two angles. So it has two angles. The first being the primary, also known as grinding, and that is 25 degrees. So just think of it as being first when you count from 0 all the way up. Remember the two numbers, with the first one being 25. That's what you hit. That is a grinding angle. The secondary angle, also known in some textbooks as honing or sharpening, and that is 30 degrees. So two important angles that we need to know. 25 degrees and 30 degrees. Honing and sharpening are the same thing, but some tools are called honing tools, and it's good to know that it's either of these names, secondary, honing, or sharpening. And that's all pretty much mean the same thing at 30 degrees. So that's up here on that bevel edge. Now, a few things that we're going to look at across the different chisels are why the handles are different and why the blades are different. On a bevel edge chisel, regarding the blade, we've got the bevel edge to get into acute angles. The other thing is that these are so common, they're more often used by carpenters, not joiners, more often carpentry work. And that's with the handles. What you can do is hit them or strike them with a metal hammer, and that's okay. You can also strike them with a wooden mallet. So I'll take the strike from both. If we look closely at one of these, this is a bevel edge chisel, and I like this in that we can actually see through the handle. So if we take a close look through that handle, you will see that the blade has this metal rod that keeps going through the handle right up to the end. So when you strike that, you're hitting right through. And that's okay to hit that with a metal hammer. So the next type of chisel that we're going to take a look at is a mortise chisel. Okay, mortise chisel. So a mortise, this bit is a tenon, and this is our mortise, the hole. So there we have a mortise chisel. Now the mortise chisel will actually cut out the hole. I'll cut one out in another video and I'll show you how to cut it, so you can check that out. So the mortise is the hole, and it's on a joint, a mortise and tenon joint. And with that, the mortise is the hole, the tenon lives in, the tenon is like the tenant, and it lives in the property in the mortise. That's a weird way of thinking about it, but that's how it can be remembered. So the mortise chisel is much thicker than the bevel edge chisel, and it doesn't really have a neck. So it's a solid blade running all the way down, much heavier. Let's name some of these parts as well. So this one, we've got a blade, sharp end, and this is also the cutting edge. In here, we have a ferrule, and there is rubber washer in here. And what that does, well, it's either rubber or it could be leather. So you have a leather or a rubber washer here. So when you strike this, that will absorb some of the shock. Now we've got another ferrule up here, and this is the striking ferrule. When you strike that timber, if this didn't have the ring on it, that timber would end up splitting or just bust out. So that's on there to hold that timber together. In some places, it's called a steel hoop. We call it the striking ferrule in most of the textbooks that I use. And the other thing with having a very thick blade is when you are actually cutting out through a mortise, it doesn't move around as much as it might do with one of these thinner blades. So that will become clearer when we actually cut one out, and I'll show you that in another video. There we have our mortise chisel. And then we have these other chisels here, which are a bit of a combination between the Mortise chisel and the Bevel Edge chisel. They're not actually that commonly used anymore, but we still learn about them in textbooks when you're studying for them. So it's got a thick blade, but it also has a neck and a shoulders. And some of these blades, these ones aren't particularly thick, but you do get other ones that are much thicker than that. And they're used in a similar way to the Mortise chisels, but they have a neck. So they're not that great for striking really heavy through mortises. They also have plastic handles with a metal bit on the end, so you can strike that with a hammer, but no bevel edge. And that's called a firmer chisel. The firmer chisel, the difference between a firmer chisel and the mortise chisel is that the firmer chisel has a neck. It's not as common. And I've only got these because I've bought them years ago. But if I was setting out and buying a new set, I probably wouldn't bother buying any firmer chisels. I get a set of bevel edge chisels and mortise chisels instead. So that's a quick look at your common basic start out chisels. If you're getting into the carpentry, the bevel edge chisels will do absolutely fine, and you'll be able to do pretty much everything with those. If you're going to get into more of the hand tools as well as stuff in the workshop and more joinery work, you might want to start getting into mortise chisels. And then you get more advanced, and we'll do another video on that in the future, on other types of chisels that you can get that will create curves, inside and outside curves, and all sorts of other types of chisels. But this is a great beginner's one. So there you have it. Hope that helped. We're going to start using them. If you want to check that out, check out the next one. Cheers.